Now you see, the title has the word RAPE included. Now going forward, I will substitute the phrase sexual abuse for that word. Hopefully that may help keep the censors off my back. In many of my posts, I have often spoke of the E1B1A haplogroup and its relationship to the true people of Israel, the Negroes. I do this because it's a fact of life and a fact of the Bible and a fact of science, as a matter of fact. Many people reject this for the fact that it runs contrary to the various false doctrines they teach. What is not widely discussed, however, is how sexual abuse impact our Y-DNA makeup. Must be a kind of taboo thing, or just so they can keep perpetuating their lying narratives about us. But today I'm going to do a little discussion on that. So let's take a little pause and remember, please subscribe and like and comment. Now, around the late 2017 to 2019, the interest in DNA testing exploded. It could be earlier than that, but that was when I started noticing it on YouTube and so forth. Now they marketed these as ways to learn about one's heritage. People were buying DNA testing kits and they were sharing the results on the internet and YouTube during that time. Now, there are three types of DNA tests, and I'm taking this from one of those DNA testing sites. So, whatever I'm saying here is what they say. First of all, an autosomal DNA test, which is the basis of this post. So I'll get into that much later. The others are Y-DNA tests, which only men can effectively use. It identifies male relatives of the paternal line, reaching back to 60,000 years. Now, the mtDNA test can determine genetic relationship on the maternal line from up to 150,000 years ago. Hey, you see, from they start this with a lie, so it's not gonna get any better. It's just gonna get any worse. It's just gonna get more worse. 150,000 years ago, that is the evolution dates, evolutionary dates. But anyway, let me continue. This test usually include an analysis of your genetic makeup including your regions of origin, maternal and paternal lineage, and Neanderthal ancestry. Trust me, I didn't make that. I didn't make that up. And I can tell you why that is so important that you have Neanderthal ancestry. That's because the Neanderthal is the ones who are writing this, and they think themselves, very important. So if you have Neanderthal ancestry, that means you're kind of important. You even if you're a Negro, you're getting up there. So that's the way to look at it. But I digress. I will probably say more on that later. Now, several companies offer these services today. Once you are connected to their database, they will identify and offer to connect you with people who share a DNA match with you. I watched some of these DNA test results on YouTube, and I was amazed how ignorantly some of these Negroes interpreted the results. With elation and most likely pride, they would reveal their ancestral roots in a YouTube video. Invariably, the results would read something like this: 2% Scots, 1% Scandinavian, 50% Bantu Africans, 30% Cameroonians, and 17% Ghanaians. But it would be common for these Negroes to diminish the 97% of them that are Negroid. That is Bantu, Cameroonians, and Ghanaians. And they would amplify the 3% of European DNA, that is the Scots and the Scandinavian. Now, the next thing you know, they are out trying to find kilts to buy, to connect with their white European heritage, are just making a total ass of themselves, really. So, let me break this down to you. This is how it works scientifically. When a woman and a man copulate, that is, have sex, it often results in a conception, which will later grow into a fully fledged human. During the process, both parents contribute half of their DNA to their offspring. Passing of genes will continue in the next generation as each sex passes on half of their DNA chromosomes down the line. Over time, one of the DNA profiles will be diminished as one line falls back into the DNA of his or her original DNA profile. So how did these Negroes end up having the genes of Europeans? They get it during slavery and colonialism. It is called, you know what, but let's call it sexual abuse here. Plain and simple. The reality is that during slavery and colonialism of Africa, there were widespread rape of the widespread sexual abuse of the enslaved and colonized women by their European masters. Many children were spawned with the DNA of their sexual abusive forefathers. These children intermarry back into the general Negro population. The sexual abuser DNA decreases during successive generation, and then it becomes negligible over time. Therefore, let us read a little further. We read from My Heritage website the following. Your origins are encoded in your DNA and enable us to pinpoint where in the world your ancestors came from. Your DNA result will include an ethnicity breakdown and identify the specific group you descended from among 2,114 geographical regions. Now, this is why, these Negroes who are reading into their DNA results, European ancestry, that is false. All this DNA result is doing is identifying where in Europe the sexual abuser originate from. They are not your ancestors. Therefore, whenever you amplify your negligible European ancestral DNA, you are simply glorifying, let's call it sexual abuser of your foreparents. You should be ashamed of the result and therefore be ashamed of yourself for amplifying it. Now, sexual abuse, it was a fact of slavery and colonialism. It is recorded in the Bible, though, that God would scatter the people of Israel worldwide. They would be severely afflicted by their enemies whom they were scattered to. This would include theft of their land and property and natural resources, the enslavement and murder of their people, and the rape of, the sexual abuse of their women, among other things. Sexual abuse is violence and is usually preceded by hatred against the person. By the way, the slavers sexually abuse boys also. Now, whomever it is the victim, they bear no fault. The criminal controls all the institutions of, I put it, quote, injustice. So there will not be any accountability for his actions and no redress for the victim. I am a man, so I can only envision the severe psychological trauma the victim is left with. For some victims, the impact can be lifelong. This reminds me of a rape incident recorded in the Bible. Now, King David of Israel had a son, Ammon, who conspired to rape his half-sister Tamar. It went as follows.
2 Samuel 13 verse 11. And she brought to him to eat. And he took hold of her, and said to her, Come, go to bed with me, my sister. 2 Samuel 13 verse 12. And she said to him, No, O my brother, you should not abase me, for it shall not be done so in Israel. You should not do this folly. 2 Samuel 13 verse 13. And I, where shall I carry away my scorn? And you will be as one of the fools in Israel. And now, speak indeed to the king. For in no way will he restrain me from you. 2 Samuel 13 verse 14. And Amnon did not want to hear her voice. And he powered over her, and abased her, and went to bed with her. 2 Samuel 13 verse 17. And he called his servant set over his house, and said to him, Send indeed this one from me outside, and lock the door after her. 2 Samuel 13 verse 19. And Tamar took ashes, and put them upon her head. And the inner garment, the one with long sleeves, the one upon her, she tore, and she put her hands upon her head, and she went going and crying out. 2 Samuel 13 verse 20. And Absalom her brother said to her, Has Amnon your brother been with you? And now my sister be silent. For he is your brother. Do not put it to your heart to say anything. And Tamar sat expiring in the house of Absalom her brother. Thayer definition, expiring. G 1634, 1, to expire, to breathe out one's life.
Now, this excerpt, shows the great shame and psychological trauma of rape upon a woman. It shows the impact on Tamar as she sat expiring, that is, wasting away emotionally in the house of her brother. As far as she was concerned, her life was over and she was good for nothing. But one notes that this is a family situation. Imagine how much more terrible it was during the time of slavery and colonialism. These were foreign nations who held your people in captivity. Shame on those who celebrate the minimal Neanderthal heritage. You glorify rape of your ancestors. Now, the best method of determining one's ancestry is through an autosomal test. It provides a more reliable and foolproof method. This test is based on the scientific premise that every human being on the earth is descended from a certain human thousands of years earlier. This individual passes on his Y-DNA haplogroup to his male descendants, who pass it on to their male descendants unchanged throughout many generations. There are exceptions to the rules, however, and sometimes they do change. In science, this is called a mutation. Scientists say mutation can occur during cell division. Usually, they say mutation is a bad thing, but they will admit that they don't know much about the cause and what, and they say there's a lot of research that is needed. I think it is God. It has to do with God, just like how God differentiate the DNA haplogroup of Esau and Jacob in the womb of their mother. He separated them. It's one man that fathered them, but they end up having two different haplogroups. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This is for another lesson. So it is interesting that the Bible shows that all humanity was descended from one of Noah's three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. But today we have scores of haplogroups in the world, some of Asian, some of white, while others remain Negroid, including Israel. All of this is outside the scope of this study, and I may have to do that for another study. Today we ascertain that the founding lineage for the ancient Israelite nationality is the E1B1A haplogroup. In other words, these were the sons, that is descendants, meaning the females too, of the biblical individual called Jacob, whom God renamed Israel. This is how Israel determined their genealogy, except that DNA science was not available at that time. Ezra 8:1 to Ezra 8:14, you read the genealogical description of the Israelites who were gathered were all sons of certain Israelite forefathers. For example,
Ezra 8 verse 1 to 2. And these are the rulers of their families, and the genealogy of the ones ascending with me, in the kingdom of Artaxerxes the king of Babylon. The sons of Phinehas, Gershom; of the sons of Itamar Daniel; of the sons of David, Hattush.
however, in Nehemiah 7:61, there were those who couldn't ascertain their genealogical status as sons of any known forefathers, and they were excluded from identification as Israelites.
Nehemiah 7 verse 61. And these ascended from Tel Melah, Tel Harsha, Cherub, Adon, Immer. And they were not able to identify the houses of their families, and their seed, if they are of Israel.
By the way, since this is only passed on from the father to the son, the daughter still can ascertain her Israelite genealogy. She can do this by finding out what is the haplogroup of her grandfather, her father, brother, or even any male cousin, assuming they are descendants from the same line. Now, just as sexual abuse impacted the mtDNA, it also impacted the Y-DNA also. A perfect example is that of the Y-DNA of the general African American population male.
For about 35% of African Americans, who perform Y chromosome testing, they find that their Y chromosome is of European origin.
A different assessment that says it was 69% of African American was E1B1A. Now, this chart might be a little more recent, but if you notice, you take an average, it's about 75%. So that's not bad, that's better. If you know the Ancestry.com says 65%. So that was actually closer to the 69% I read earlier. So that might have been the Ancestry.com figures. Ancestry.com says 65%. 23andMe says 75%, which is closer to the average that I have. Family Tree DNA says 73%. National Geographic says 80%, which seems pretty high, and if that's true, that would be good. African DNA says 79%. Now, whatever figure you want to use, say you use 35% or 20%, what the fact is that a large portion of African American are white ancestry, white DNA ancestry, or Indian. That is most likely, from my view, is a black Indians DNA, which we mixed with while we were here. And then there are others. You'll also notice that they give the explanation underneath the chart. And it's exactly what I've been inferring all the time. That it's from RAPE and they claim it's coercion, sexual coercion. But there's no sexual coercion during slavery, man. No woman had a choice to be coerced. It was just simply rape. Therefore, 35% of African American male were not descended from the line of Jacob. So who were they descended from? They are descendants of white slave masters. This reminds me of a YouTube video I once made. It's called Who Are the True Israel of God? Are they a race, E1B1A, of black people in general? The Bible explains. I put a link in the description to this. Now, this video focused on a certain self-styled Hebrew Israelite teacher. A very bad and devilish one, I might add. This guy teaches that that Africa is actually is Israel, and Ethiopia is Jerusalem. Apparently, he went out and he took the autosomal DNA test, and it turned out that he was haplogroup G. He was not E1B1A. He is from the haplogroup G.
Haplogroup G, M201, is a human Y chromosome haplogroup. Nowadays haplogroup G is found all the way, from Western Europe and Northwest Africa, to Central Asia, India and East Africa. Although everywhere at low frequencies, generally between 1 and 10% of the population, the only exception is the Caucasus region, central and southern Italy and Sardinia, where frequencies typically range from 15% to 30% of male lineages.
It is sexual abuse that accounts for the difference. Of course, there are other factors that may skew these results. For example, including sampling other Negroid nationalities such as Somalis and Nilotics with the African Americans who are Negroes. Some of these people, especially the former, shuns identification with Negroes, but they must select Black or African American for ethnicity questions on application forms. But with all consideration, it is still apparent the percentage of African Americans are other than E1B1A haplogroups. This should make for a little reflection at least. Therefore, whenever I speak of E1B1A haplogroup represent the ancient Israelite nation, it shouldn't be cause for criticism of that view. It is because it is the biblical and scientific fact. I am not teaching it to say that I am E1B1A and others are not. Nani. No. First, the Bible teaches that being a blood descendant of Israel does not guarantee salvation. Have you not read?
Isaiah 10 verse 22. And though the people of Israel be as the sand of the sea, a remnant of them shall be saved.
Now, so if the teaching of E1B1A being identified as the blood descendants of Jacob and rendering others as non-descendants, that is, others who are not E1B1A. Therefore, should this foster identity crisis within Israel? I don't think so. One must remember that the child is a product of both mother and father, as I have discussed earlier. If the father is not E1B1A, we must be mindful of the historical reason for that. This was basically imposed on them by virtue of them being debilitated during their captivity. That is, during slavery. Remember, I told you they have no resources. The abusers had the complete, the complete option to to justice, or one would say injustice. Now, there is voluminous evidence from the Bible that an Israelite destiny is predicated on his relationship to the God of Israel. So it's not just thinking about E1B1A, being Israel. Not necessarily, because you can be others. I mean, slightly related to Israel. That is, the mother is an Israelite, but the father is a non-Israelite. It's still, the descendants are still Israelites. But should we ignore the teachings that the founding lineage for the ancient Hebrew Israelite nationality is the E1B1A haplogroup? This would be an enormous error on our part. Before now, there have been various Gentile nationalities that claim Israelite heritage. But these claims are easily proven false when mirrored against the Bible. There are people, including many so-called black people, would like to reject it for obvious reason. Some will point to the Bible verse of 1 Timothy verse 4. Now, let me explain. This verse was quoted by the Apostle Paul as instruction to Timothy because of a certain situation that was occurring. At the time, some Edomites had infiltrated the assemblies set up by the early Israelite followers of Christ. They and some of the other, genetic Israelites did not understand the importance of faith to salvation. They think that physical genealogy to Abraham. And why is it Abraham? Because Esau wasn't descended from Jacob. They were descended from Abraham. So both groups are descended from Abraham. So this is why it says Abraham. This is why Abraham is relevant to this than Jacob. They would uphold their genealogy to Abraham at the expense of faith. This is teaching that this is a false idea. That was the idea of this letter from Paul, that this idea is obviously false, because genealogy is not what really make you, and that's not the end all matter, because you could be a genetic Israelite, but as the Bible says many times, you're unsaved, and it doesn't matter then if you're a genetic Israelite.
1 Timothy 1 verse 4. Neither give heed to fables and endless genealogies, which minister questions, rather than godly edifying which is in faith. So do.
Now, throughout history, throughout Israel's history, many have transgressed God's commandment to them not to intermarry with Gentiles. Let's read.
Deuteronomy 7 verse 3. Neither shalt thou make marriages with them, thy daughter thou shalt not give unto his son, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son.
Now, you see, no man chose their parents, and they are not responsible for their origin. This is not saying you should not crave being of Israel. But if you notice lately, um, uh, there's a kind of push towards interracial marriages, especially in America here. One out of every three television commercials are interracially themed. You can tell that by seeing interracial, that the family is interracial. The father is black, the mother is white, and the children is mixed. Did you know that the great majority of these interracial offsprings rather be counted among their non-Negro parental heritage than to Israel? That's a fact. But some of these offsprings often buck the trend and do declare themselves Israel. Some are more nationalist Israel than those who are E1B, E1A haplogroup. Take for example, Bob Marley. Now his father, Noble Sinclair Marley, born in UK in 1885. By the way, I'm quoting from some text. This is not my word. At the age of 60, met and married 18-year-old Cedella Malcolm while working as a supervisor on a plantation in Jamaica. Of course, this is an inappropriate sexual contact, considering God's commandment that Israelites must not marry Gentiles. Now, Bob's father was a Scotsman, mostly from haplogroup R1b/M269, which originated in Western Europe, most likely around the England area. Therefore, Bob Marley haplogroup would be obviously R1b/M269. It is reported that because of his, well, again I'm reading from a quote. This is not my word. It is reported that because of his mixed racial makeup, Bob was bullied and derogatively nicknamed white boy by his neighbors. However, he later said the experience helped him develop his philosophy. He said he was on the side of God, and his music obviously tells you that he relates to the people of God, which is Israel. Now compare that with his son Ziggy Marley, right, who once openly declared he is not a black man. Of course, there's Jerry Rawlings also. He's the former president of Ghana. He was the son of a Scottish father as well. His mother was Ghanaian. That means she's an Israelite. Now listen to how nationalist black he is.
Jerry Rawlings was born in Accra, Ghana, on the 22nd of June 1947 to his mother Victoria Abokchui and his Scottish father James Ramsey.
Songs in praise of me, please. Sing it in praise of Ghana and Africa, the black man.
Christianize me if you may, but don't try to Europeanize me.
Let me assure you that Africa can work. It is up to the rest of the world to look beyond the prejudiced and sensational images and recognize Africa as the continent of the future.
Of course, there are thousands upon thousands of others, but obviously this video would be too long, so I have to end here. So please subscribe and comment and like. Thank you.